Welcome to this week's edition of Table Talk. I'm Olivia Wieseler, reporting for the Star-Herald, and today we have guests from two different churches here in the area. We have Tim Hebbert from Gearing Zion and Tyson Lambertson from the Rock Church. So I was just wondering if you guys could tell me a little bit about the Convoy of Hope and that kind of program that you guys have been helping out with over the summer. How did that
Sure.
start?
So Convoy of Hope is a ministry that's worldwide, and they respond to disasters. And one of the things they've done during the COVID for the United States is deliver food trucks all over the United States. And so there was some conversation, made a phone call, sent an email, and through some relationships we were able to develop this system to where they would bring out a truck to us. And we started with one truck and didn't know how it would go. And all of a sudden it was crazy packed, it was wild. And all because of one generous widow who donated the monies to purchase this truck to bring it back to Scottsbluff. And then shortly thereafter, was a month and a half, shortly thereafter, they called and said, hey, we have another produce truck. But at the same time, Pastor Kylie from Northfield was working on a potato truck, and they happened to come at the same time. So that's how those things happened, and we've had generous donations, generous people purchase those trucks for us.
Yeah, so I was a little curious about how, if it started with just your church and then it kind of grew to include a bunch of different churches, or how, where did all the volunteers and stuff for that come from?
That's a great question. I don't remember, Tim, do you?
Well, we've been doing a Wednesday call with Tabby from Panhandle Public Health for pastors, and so there's typically 20 to 30 pastors on that call. And as I recall, you got that call on a Tuesday, so our Wednesday call, he opened it up to see who'd be involved, and that first truck, just pastors served, and we probably had 14 or 15 different churches represented. And then the second go around, it was even more than that. We expanded, and then we invited our church families if they could volunteer and come, because it was going to be so much more, and people were just dying to do something to help other people. So we really had more help than we needed, but we were good to put them all to work, because everybody gets blessed then.
That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the Convoy of Hope, did they start coming, or did you guys kind of make the call to have them come out here because of the coronavirus pandemic, or did that have nothing to do with?
Yeah, it's all centered around COVID and trying to minister to our community and love on our community, and we wanted to get the churches involved and the pastors involved. We're better together, and so if we can do things together, if we can minister to the community together, this was just the start. This is just scratching the surface of what I think the Lord wants us to do as a body of believers, as a church, the whole church coming together to minister to our community.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, we've discussed a lot of being able to deliver food to people has been great, but what I've caught, I know Tyson's probably seen the same thing, a lot of people were coming through, and the sense of community they felt just being a part of the event and connecting with the people that were serving was a blessing on both sides. And so we're trying to scheme together as pastors to find other ways that we can come together and serve the community. The food is great, but there's so many other ways that we can serve together. And so I think down the road, when some of the restrictions are lifted, that's kind of our heart, is to really expand and not let it just be something that happens during a pandemic crisis, but something that's ongoing, that we're not going to wait for something bad to happen to really dig in and build into the community, but find ways to really reach out to people. And it really is great for our churches, because Tyson's right, when we're together we're way better than when we're all individually trying to do our own thing.
And so, speaking of the pandemic, could you tell me a little bit about what each of your churches are doing to kind of go along with all the restrictions and all the precautions and everything? What are some of the measures that you guys are taking at your churches?
It's a great question. We like I said, we have clergy call every Wednesday at 10 a.m. to talk with Tabby, hear the latest updates, the things that are happening, ask questions about how to social distance, how the precautions and all those things. So we're trying to do our best to follow those guidelines, follow the recommendations. Of course, when you come into our sanctuary, it's different. We have chairs set apart, rows are 6 feet apart. We try to make sure there's hand sanitizer, washing stations that we, after every service, we go through and clean and sanitize. So we're trying to do our best. A lot of people wear masks, some don't. So just trying to navigate what's best for our congregation, and as well as keep people safe and keep people healthy.
We're doing pretty much the same thing. We have chairs and not pews, so we can be a lot more creative in our seating. But we've really tried to set up an environment where people can come in. They literally don't have to touch anything. I mean, the door, we have somebody at the door waiting to greet them that opens the door for them, and we've got hand sanitation centers all over also, and trying to create as much of an environment of when we started coming back to church. I encouraged our folks to, if they weren't comfortable coming back into the room yet, we continued our online service, and I said, can really preach to them that you're not going to be judged if you feel more safe at home. We still love you. We're just going to love you through a camera lens. And I've really tried to stress grace to our people, that just because somebody else has a different opinion than yours doesn't necessarily make them right and you wrong, or vice versa. So just give each other a little bit of grace, because everybody's reacting to this in their own way, and we don't need more tension, we need less. So
I think one of the game changers for us is it forced us to really up the ante with our technology.
yeah,
It stretched us to the max with our technological systems, and so we had to purchase equipment. We had to get better on training and equipping sound and camera and editing and all those things. So it stretched us but that was a good stretch for us. So coming out of the pandemic, or even still in the midst of this, I believe we're better than when we went in, because we're working on systems and trying to make things happen. It stretched everything. So in that process, knowing that it stretches all the systems, it's stretching people too. And I keep telling our people, we've got to love your neighbor as yourself. We've got to love God and love our neighbor, and that's so important for us.
Awesome. Speaking of coming out of the pandemic and stuff, I know we're kind of still in the middle of it, but you kind of mentioned that, as we're starting to come out of it, you're hoping to kind of do more together, do more community. Have you guys thought at all about what that might look like after coming out of that pandemic?
Those are some conversations we are having on our 10 a.m. Zoom calls. I think we've scratched the surface, but I believe there's something that the Lord wants us to do that's deeper, that is long-lasting, that is effective, that is relationship building, that is substantial for our community. There's something about the Lord stirring up some stuff, and I'm excited about it. So yes, we're having those conversations.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
If you go back and study the book of Acts and many of Paul's letters to the churches, so like Paul would write a letter to the church in Ephesus. They didn't have buildings. They met all over town. And I really feel one of the things God is repositioning our churches to be is our food giveaway. All the pastors, we have a shirt that's #OneChurch. We meet in different places. We may have different styles of worship, but we serve one God and one Savior. And so we are one church. And my heart for us, and he loves to give me a hard time because I've been here for 50 years and I wasn't born here, so I'm older than that.
He's old.
But my dad actually pastored the church I pastor now for 40 years before I became the pastor, and my heart has always been to see the church unite itself. Now we can gather in our own houses of worship on Sundays, and we still are going to maintain much of what we do, but I think it's opened our eyes, at least it's opened my eyes more and a lot of my colleagues, that we really need to, we can be a force for really good things in this community if we work hard together and set our little differences aside and focus on Jesus and what he would have done, and he would have loved and taken care of people. So I feel like we're getting back to a place where we look a little more like that church in the early days, where they met all over, but they still came together and had one purpose and one vision. So.
Awesome. Is there anything else regarding the Convoy of Hope that you guys would like to share? Has there been plans for it to continue necessarily?
That's a great question. We are on a list, and whenever there's something available, we will always say yes,
Gotcha.
because we believe in being the hands and feet of Jesus. So if there's somebody or something that comes along and says, "Hey, we have another truck," we'll say yeah, because we've done this. We've got our systems. Yes, the last 2 times our systems have been tested, but we've learned from those, and so now it's become, we're better. We're better at it, so we're able to mobilize quickly and make something happen.
One thing we've learned is we set a starting time, but we always start earlier than that because we have to, because the parking lot and the streets are starting to back up. And the first one we did, we were at the Paul Reed parking lot, and the line was backed up over the bridge coming from Scotts Bluff, and it was backed up to the railroad tracks coming from Gearing. And I think we were going to start at 10, and it was 9, and Tyson said, "What do we do?" And I said, "I think we got to start because there's nowhere for people to go." So it's really been fun to see the response from people, but also the sparkle in people's eyes when the connection they make with the people serving them is as important as the food is. So.
Yeah, that was something else I was going to ask about, is what has the response been like to these food giveaways, from the Convoy of Hope?
Mostly good. Mostly good. People are very, very thankful and appreciative. We've had some problems, and that's natural. So we just navigate through the problems and continue to love our neighbor and do our best to share hope with them during the midst of this. I mean, everybody's stretched, as I mentioned before. And we just got to have a lot of grace.
A lot of grace.
Give a lot of grace and receive a lot of grace.
Awesome. Well, thank you for talking with us today, and for coming in. I'm Olivia Wieseler, reporting for the Star-Herald, and this has been Table Talk.